Juror number 2 is a courtroom thriller about a juror's dilemma with a case that he might be involved with. Its feasibility is cloudy, but it's a pretty exciting ride. Let's talk about it. In this movie, we follow Justin Kemp, played by Nicholas Hoult. He's a soon-to-be father who gets summoned for jury duty. After being briefed on the case, he comes to realize that he might actually be the person responsible for the victim's death. He's caught in a moral dilemma and has to choose between convicting somebody who's potentially innocent and stepping forward and risking his own life falling apart. Moral dilemmas are the theme of this movie. Justin is faced with several of them that regard his potential crime. The keyword there is potential. We are left in the dark on whether or not he's actually involved in the death of this woman. Her boyfriend, James Scythe, is the only suspect because of the very aggressive argument they had the night of her death. So we're constantly prompted to wonder whether or not Justin is innocent, as he's constantly prompted to make statements in the jury that could incriminate him over the accused. In addition to Justin's dilemmas, there's also a dilemma faced by the prosecution attorney Faith, played by Toni Collette. She's running for DA and she sees this case as leverage to win the election, as winning a high-profile case would likely appeal to voters. But she does also care about justice, and as the case that she has built against James Scythe starts to crack under pressure, she has to choose between giving the case a fair investigation that could cause her to lose and doubling down with the case that she's built against James Scythe at the expense of convicting a potentially innocent man. The tension feels very real because as much as most of us like to think that we would make the morally correct decision in these circumstances, we'd probably be equally as torn. As much as some people value their integrity, a lot of those people would probably lean towards making the selfish decision and convict the guy. It's that question of what would I do that makes this movie so interesting and tense, and all of that is of course fueled by the ambiguity of the case. In the courtroom scenes, they masterfully jump back and forth between the prosecution and the defense, and questions arise like, did Scythe break the glass on purpose out of anger, or was it actually an accident? With a seemingly unbiased narrative, the movie does a good job of making us wonder whether or not Scythe is actually guilty, which of course makes Justin and Faith's decisions murkier. So on the surface, James Scythe is on trial, but beneath that, what's really on trial in this movie is the justice system. This movie digs into the many ways that our legal system can fail potentially innocent people, focusing on how incompetence and human error can impact a trial and in turn a person's life. Factors like lawyers and law enforcement taking the shortest path to a conviction because of their underlying hatred of paperwork, and jurors just wanting to find the guy guilty just so they can wrap up the case because jury duty sucks. It's thought-provoking not just because of the notion that these factors can influence a trial, but also because realistically, these factors have influenced trials and led to wrongful convictions. This movie wants to paint the picture that the justice system is very flawed and exploitable. Its statements are strong, though the ways that they arrive at some of them are a little bit questionable. In reality, a lot needs to be presented in court to convict somebody of murder when there is no forensic evidence that places them at the scene of the crime. Much like 12 Angry Men, the jurors need to pick up the investigative slack, with the movie's hook, of course, being that one of the jurors knows things about the case that the others don't. So the jury is floating these new ideas about how Scythe could be innocent, and they leave you to wonder, okay, did the defense attorney just do absolutely nothing in this case? The defense attorney is depicted as overworked, but honestly, some of the shortcomings were really a stretch. For example, at no point does the defense make the point, hey, perhaps it was somebody driving by that hit her on this extremely rainy night where she was walking home on the side of a street with no sidewalk. The point I'm making is that the entire legal system in this movie felt less competent than an ordinary person who has seen a full season of Forensic Files. The suspension of disbelief is just really demanding. Those might sound like shallow criticisms because that is the point of the movie, to highlight how the system can fail people. But if we're being honest, this movie's entertainment value completely hinges on our understanding of the justice system. So it's hard for the movie to ask us to apply our knowledge of law and then also ask us to excuse the fact that the most basic protocols were ignored in literally every legal institution. Emphasis on basic. So you need to overlook some half-baked writing to enjoy this movie, but it is worth it if you can because there's also a lot of great writing weaved into the script. The movie has plenty of character depth that gets revealed throughout the movie, adding interesting revelations and very compelling layers to the characters involved. Once the movie powers through the evidence presented in court, we jump into the jury's discussion of their verdict. There's a lot going on with Justin here that makes his dilemmas so much more challenging. Both his past and his future are influencing his decisions. And the layers of depth in some of the other jurors made for some very interesting character dynamics, and it really made them feel like big players rather than just one-dimensional characters. It's also decent enough in the performance department across the board, but I actually liked that Gabriel Basso, who plays the accused, James Scythe, didn't give the most compelling performance. As strange as that sounds, it actually contributes to the ambiguity of his innocence. It's not really bad acting, it's just a little bit underwhelming, which may or may not have been deliberate. Who knows? So unlike traditional courtroom dramas, there isn't much new evidence being presented in court that serves as bombshells in the story. All of the things that the jury pieces together that could point them in the direction of Justin are things that we already know. So there aren't many things stirring up the case for us viewers, but the movie is still interesting and tense all the way through because of the character struggles and the ambiguity. So much so that all of the pregnant pauses in this movie don't make it feel sluggish. We feel the pressures that characters bear with every contemplative moment. It looks like Clint Eastwood had enough juice left in him to make another good movie at the age of 93, which is just wild. It wasn't confirmed to be his last movie, but at the age of now 94, it very well could be. I'd like to echo some of the confused feelings that others have expressed leading up to this movie's release about how strange it is that Warner Bros. Discovery seems to have had no faith in it succeeding. It came out during Oscar season, but only with one trailer to promote it 1 month before its release in less than 50 theaters nationwide. That leads us to believe that they had no faith in it succeeding at the box office. For what could be the last film from a living legend like Clint Eastwood, I would like to think that more people would be interested and they could have done a wider release, but that's just my opinion. The perks of living in a major city though, I got to see it in theaters and I thought it was good. If you can find a screening near you, I would say check it out. It's definitely worth seeing on the big screen. Unless, of course, you'd prefer a more feasible courtroom thriller where you don't need to suspend your disbelief. This might not be the one that you're looking for. Thank you for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please give it a like. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you later this week with my review of Heretic.